Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure for us to continue today with this session on AI. And we'll be discussing the possibilities in terms of AI, how to use the different artificial intelligences, since there are several, and we will talk about how to harness AI in digital investigations. AI has really disrupted today's world in terms of investigation. So we'll discuss your daily lives and what you are doing with this huge amount of data that is steadily growing, increasing, and so this is where AI can really play a role. So let's widen the scope. Let's try to understand what you can do with AI. It is a very important framework. We're talking about data collection, but also data analysis. So it's quite a wide scope for AI, but it also requires us to take into account the different changes. This really changes the way we do investigations. So how do you adapt? As investigators, how do you support investigators in their roles with the different solutions you are providing? So let's come back to some of the security challenges, but also we will discuss some of the legal challenges, because we are discussing the different European regulatory frameworks. And let's not forget about ethics, since this is one of the key topics of the day. We will start with a few questions and answers with the panel, and of course after that I will give the floor to the audience for their questions. This is the objective. We want an interactive session. So we have Vincent Roy with us, Security Advisor at Splunk. Thank you very much for being here with us. We also have Adrien Merveille. Thank you, Adrien, for being here with us. You are CTO France for Checkpoint. So many thanks. And we also have Julien Bouzon with us. Thank you, Julien. You're an expert in terms of legal digital investigations for La Poste. We have Nizar Toulemat with us too. You're in charge of security and defense for the CEA and coordinating the Starlight project in Europe. So we will come back on this program later. And we also have Iwan Quazel with us. Thank you very much for being here with us. Your digital forensic examiner for Europol. We have today a lot of experts. Thank you for presenting your different publications, the different improvements in the fight against cyber crime. Ewan, we will start with you if you agree so. So about your daily life as an investigator, what are the applications of AI? So good afternoon, everybody. As you've mentioned it quite clearly, there's a major increase in the amount of data at all levels. And when we're talking about investigation, even if we're talking about only one individual, 10 years ago we would only deal with 10 gigabytes of data. Now when we're talking about cybercrime, we're talking petabytes of data. So manually processing such amount of data is impossible. This is why AI should not be seen as a solution, but rather as a tool. You have to be able to smartly use it and use it as a facilitating system. AI will serve as a screening tool to eliminate the data that is not relevant in your investigation. The objective is to decrease the amount of data and maybe give a first categorization to the data. After that comes the expert, and the expert will have more time to really do the job and process the data in depth. So if we would had to ask the same person to do the entire work, it would require a lot more time. And so such an AI tool can really help out in this matter. So allow me to circle back to what is my expertise, my domain of expertise. I work with encrypted data. So I receive a huge amount of data, and what I'm doing is using automated language processing, because I receive a lot of data that might not be in languages that I do speak. I do speak 3 languages, but in Europe we can find a lot more languages than just 3 languages. So if I have data in German, for example, I don't know if they are interesting for my investigation or not. So I can ask AI to provide me with a first translation, to screen to know if this document is relevant or not. And if it's relevant, I can ask my colleagues for someone who could explain exactly the content of this document. Of course, I would not rely on automated translation. I'm pretty sure you've tested it out yourself. The results are not perfect, but anyway, it gives me a first idea to know if it might be relevant or not. Lastly, I also use automated language processing in my password analysis system. So I'm trying to find the passwords of criminals to obtain their data. Using data analysis and language processing, I can understand what type of grammar they're using, and you can understand the criminal's own language. We would use statistical analysis in the past, and now AI brings something new to the table. We have another level, an entirely new level of statistical analysis. As you can see with automated text translation, you can have password generation, passphrases generation that can really ease the work for us. Once again, AI will not be the solution. I have to understand exactly what I need. I have to train the AI and use it later on. But it does change the work of investigation and gives us a lot more chances to do the job. So this tool is there to support you, support the security teams and investigations teams. And of course, the skills of human beings are still at the core of the final solution that is being implemented. And that's what we've been discussing since the beginning of this conference. We are talking about a lot of technologies, but at the end of the day, the human beings are still at the core of everything we do. Julien Bernot, we might want to, Julien Bouzon rather, sorry, we would like to come back on the different pillars that are at the core of your investigation approach. We're talking, of course, equality, the possibility to do certain aspects at a technological level, and of course, ethics has a role to play. So, I'm the person who analyzes the data at the end of the process you've just mentioned, so it's quite interesting. So, we have AI, and AI can give me an idea to know if I'm following the right path or not. So investigations have to be analyzed in the ethical, technical, but also security level, and human level, of course. So on the technical aspect, one of the most important points, and one that should be really taken into account, is that you have to test out these AI tools, confront them with real situations in order to ensure they are effective. You cannot base your work on theory only. You need to understand if they do provide advantages in terms of quality, time, the amount of data processed, or even just decreasing the amount of work for the human being. For some investigations, some of the tasks are really cumbersome and require a lot of work, so AI can help out. So the investigator has a very important role to play because we are at the end of this process, so we are safeguarding the result. We can give a critique analysis of the results and maybe realize that a mistake has been done. So you need basic knowledge of AI. You need to understand exactly what is the limit of your tools, Also, you have to be able to assess the possibility of mistakes, of biases that are linked with the algorithm. So you have to be trained. That is paramount. Now, when we start talking about security, security is a second layer. So it means we're talking about sensitive data, for example, for intelligence questions, and you have also to implement prevention. And when we talk about prevention, these are very important challenges in terms of confidentiality, authenticity, traceability, and also the fact that simply when we're talking about evidence, they have to be adequate and usable for the courts. So we have a lot of tools. For traceability, for example, we are working on transparency questions. Our systems have to be transparent. So can we use maybe open source systems or others? Many possibilities in this area. And then on confidentiality aspect, we have to decide where the information is stored, where the processing of the data is done. And this is also about the possibility of cloud storage. And I think that we've been mentioning a lot the local storage of your information. I think it's very important to always do your operations on the infrastructure you do own. This allows me to circle back to something else. Do you have applications you could mention of very concrete applications of AI in your digital investigations? There are many use cases, honestly, and testing these tools show that some are effective and some are less effective. And maybe one of the use cases that is more usable is the fact that we are programming a lot as investigators, and generative AI is totally able, and this has no security implication, to generate code. So this is great. Now, also in the interactions between the human being and the machine, you can have, for example, automated transcription. And this is very interesting, for example, for the law enforcement forces. I had a fraud case not so long ago, and it required a lot of reading images, 6,000 images to analyze and to transcribe into a data sheet. If I had to do it myself, 5 days of work at least would have been required. And there, some OCR solutions can play this role and do the job. But it was not functioning because of the format of the images. So what I did is simply use voice recognition. So I read out loud the data, and it took me 1 day instead of 5. So this is a use case of AI. Legally. Now, to give you another example, in knowledge management, for example, how individuals and companies do formalize their knowledge. Once it has been done through AI, you can activate the data through a system that can use the data to make new proposals. Or you can also fine-tune AI by training it with the data. So you create, at the end of the day, an AI that is expert in a certain field. Now, thank you very much, Julien. Now we will switch to Vincent. What kind of solutions are you providing the law enforcement forces with, the investigators and so on? How do they use AI, and at which level? And would it be a game-changing solution for the investigation missions? So let me explain first of all what we are doing at Splunk. We have a data platform. We're dealing with non-structured data or semi-structured data. So, for example, when we are pinpointing phone signals, these are not real data that are formatted. So we have first to gather the data, collect the data, categorize it, and then give it to the AI. So first of all, how do you get the data? So two kind of approaches. First of all, we can have dead images. So for example, a hard drive that has been seized during a in a crime scene, for example, we take it, we inject it in our data platform, and then we have living images, as I call them. So, for example, we log in a system to try and follow up the information. And as we realize more and more every day, we need both kind of data in order to enrich the data and then process it through AI, because AI is able to deal with a big volume of data. And then after that, we ask human beings to just look at some of the data, just a little volume of data, so it allows us to really pass through the data with big volumes. So for example, in the US, we are working with the wealthier actors of tech industry, so we have to be able to scan all the data in very huge volumes. So really it allows you to segregate the data and better understand what is the most relevant, right? Exactly. So this data platform has another interesting aspect. As you may know, we use our vision as an interaction tool. So what we do with the data is that we give it a visual aspect presentation, and according to the use case, we offer algorithms that are really suited to the kind of use we want to do of the data. So investigators can use our toolbox and it helps them for their situations. So it's tailor-made, right? Yes, it's totally tailor-made solution. Adrien, now we were mentioning the question of the volume of data, and this is maybe one of the major challenges. I think that you're all trying to work at your own level on the aspect of the huge volume of data that has to be dealt with in order to be more efficient in our fight against cybercrime, rather. So as of today, how do you really deal with the volume of data through XDR, DR, and AI? Indeed, as software designers in terms of cybersecurity, we are, of course, focused on cybersecurity. So AI is being used, and most of all, we provide this tool in order to improve an IT system of a company. So you have several levels at which this system can be added on. So, for example, the recognition of malicious codes or behaviors. So, for example, attacks that can go through your smartphone, through your email boxes, and so on. We need solutions for these attacks that are able to recognize malicious behaviors. And for years, we've been using AI engines. At the beginning, we started with machine learning systems. Now we have deep learning systems that can go beyond that and understand a huge volume of data. They are very good at recognizing similarities, commonalities between the different malwares. So it allows these systems to discover new malwares. So, for example, you have a malware that is using the same a part of a code that is being used by another one. Well, our system is able to identify it too through AI. So thanks to this system, we are able already to block a lot of the threats. So this already decreases the amount of data that is coming from the cybersecurity ecosystem. But now we have another use case. How to use the data. That's where I introduced the question of XDR. So we have a lot of data. Some of it might be a threat. How do you deal with it? If you're working for SOC or a company or IT department at a company, how do you set priorities with the data you receive? So through these tools, we help creating priorities on the different incidents. So of course you have a level of priority that is set a bit lower if something has already been blocked, and we can also automate the responses to the threats. You've also mentioned the fact that AI could create changes in the legal aspect of security. So could you explain the real extent of AI, what can it do, and it could also be corrupted and being used for other aspects. We've been mentioning AI for 2 years, I think, and this is because we've seen the appearance of large language models. AI is nothing new, but there's a new use case that has appeared. It has been made possible through these large language models, simply. And we can see that in different tools, such as Microsoft Copilot. But Checkpoint also, this year, we are launching assistant engine. So it will guide the people who are using our solutions in their everyday work. So we know that AI is very good at analyzing a big volume of data. So if you want to look through teraoctet of logs every day, it is impossible. So this AI assistant can help you find the right one to identify the threat. So AI really makes it easy and fast at the same time. So this is really the kind of use cases for our assistants. But it will also support the people in their firewall uses every day by suggesting, for example, security policies, or giving recommendations for safety policies, and by also installing for them the policies on certain areas. Now, this also requires the involvement of the human beings about the different security policies and the control before they are applied, in order to avoid maybe that an intrusion or penetration happens. So there are two aspects to that. First, we have to ensure that AI does not make any mistake. We know that AI does provide with errors, so we can ask the same question 10 times to an AI system, and you will get different answers on very simple things. We've tested this out on the question of the Fibonacci series. We asked two AI generative systems, and one of them made a mistake. So how to make sure that no mistakes will happen? Well, we have mechanism that will analyze the answers of AI and take into account the context of the question. Because this is the other threat, is the fact that it's data leakage. So people could corrupt your AI to use your data. And now, what about AI and scripts analysis? Well, of course, at Checkpoint, we also have incident response teams. So they are there when there are security breaches at company levels. And they use AI for two reasons. Mainly to analyze the different logs, and secondly, to better understand scripts. So AI can generate scripts, but we do it the other way. We use AI to understand what the script is doing, to give us a quick answer on that. So our teams use it to speed up the process, but they still check the process is right. Of course, we do not trust the system perfectly, and this leads us to what was said before. We have tools that are supporting our work, but we have to control what is being done. So of course, trust doesn't mean that there's no control. That's what we could conclude on. So, Doctor, on the European project, Starlight project. So let's recall what it is. It's a multidisciplinary project, and you might explain what it is exactly. One of the key aspects is that it is trying to support law enforcement at the European level and provide them with tools to make them more efficient in their fight against cybercrime, but also crime in general and terrorism. Exactly. Thank you very much for the invitation to take the floor today. So Starlight project has been funded at the European level for 17 million euros by the European Commission. Some private actors are also funding the project. So at least it's more or less rather 20 million euros. It's a 4 years project. We are in the last years with 50 organizations and 14 ministries, a lot of SMEs, some industries, and the rest are big research organizations. So the objectives are several. First of all, we are trying to develop AI solutions. These are not custom-made solutions. Or rather, we are making tailor-made solutions. They are adapted to the use case, and we could design them with law enforcement. The second objective is to give a structure to this community that are not used to work together. So the industry sector, the police, and the research, they do not always have the technical background necessary. And we want this community to be sustainable beyond the 4 years of this project. So we've tried to create dream teams at national level. So for example, we have the dream team at the French level with CA. We have the police, an SME, a research institute, CNRS, and in Paris. And the same goes for the Netherlands. We have TENER, the police, an SME, and a forensic agency. And so we are working to implement this all over Europe in order to have a dream team at the European level this time. And as researchers, the objective is really to understand what are the needs of law enforcement. We know how to do research, investigations, but we do not know the daily life of a police officer. In his car, in their car, trying to do monitoring, surveillance, or a police officer expert in cyber crime. So we have to understand their needs and expectations first. And of course, one of our partners is Europol. This is very important in such a project. Also, we are trying to explain to the police what AI can bring to the table, because there's science fiction and what can be done today or 6 months from now. And we have to start the work now, because you might need something 3 years from now. And this is exactly what our role is. We are trying to also protect the infrastructure that is hosting the AI. And also we want AI to be protected from attacks from the outside. So we have now something quite new that is appearing as AI attacking AI. So we have to prevent it and already foresee it. So this is a difficult approach. We are trying to answer the needs. So this is not experimental research. This is not science fiction, as you were saying. We have real needs. So what are these needs? Well, it's quite nice to work in partnership with Europol. They are representing 14 police forces from 14 member states. So this gives us a good idea of the European priorities. And so they give us a set of priorities. We work on it. And we develop the terms for the work, and we then look at our community and try to find who would be the suited actor. So, for example, the Spanish police is working hand in hand with a Greek research center to develop a European system. And this is all supervised by Europol. And we also co-design systems. So, for example, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We already have very innovative systems, how to adapt them to the operational system. When we start the co-design system, we have a proof of concept, a first tool that can be tested out, assessed, and then we can do co-design for 6 months in order to improve it, add solutions to it. But what we want to avoid is for the first month to start with a set of requirements, and then after 6 months we are nowhere in the project. Of course, this requires a lot of flexibility. This is a very fast-paced world. It is evolving quite quickly, so this is the challenge also to be able to follow this evolution. So this project has been launched 2 years ago, so what are the achievements we can talk about? I could not mention everything because a lot is confidential. There were gaps, there were needs. I cannot tell you about it, but quite generally, I would say, in terrorism, we are trying to tackle the anticipation phase, response phase, and then investigation phase. For anticipation, for the foreseeing of terrorism, we have tools that can monitor dark web. but also that are able to see new threats emerge. We also do this for new drugs that could be on the market through organized crime. And this is something we do also for to be able to follow some suspicious individuals, people that could lead or be close to take actions. We can also follow the behaviors of some people to send a warning if they change their behaviors. In investigation phases, we have tools that make it possible to identify someone on a big volume of videos, for example, be it through the logos they have on their clothes. So we are able, even if the image is very different or varying, we can identify someone. And we can also anticipate in the volume of data a jihadist flag on the propaganda videos. That's just an example, but I have other examples that are more linked to crime. We have different use cases, and one of these is the fight against pornography. We have tools that allow for investigators not to have to analyze all the data. So, of course, we do not have access to the data, and the system is doing the prioritization. They set the priorities, and so on the videos, on the images, the system is trying to identify the place so that we can identify a victim and we can find them.
Okay, so you mentioned there's the psychological aspect, which is particularly important in these cases for the investigators seeking to protect our children, and I know that is a subject which is very topical, especially in France. Iwen, a word perhaps about the changes necessary for investigators in this digital landscape, which is changing and moving very quickly. It's true that things are moving very quickly, and it's difficult to foresee everything we're going to have to cope with. I think there's going to be a huge wave of checks of the authenticity of the content we're going to have to deal with. There's more and more falsified images, voices, videos. I think this is going to open up a whole new wave of crime. I also think that, like with the we can see AI as an enabler which can give us new possibilities, but it's the same for criminals, not just for the police. I don't know if you have already noticed, but phishing emails are much better quality today. It's not that the criminals have been taking language courses, it's that they're using tools to generate the content. And I think that's going to increase the volumes of crime we have to cope with. At the same time, it's also a change which can be positive. For example, what Julien said was very interesting. Being able to produce script is a task which we're not all very good developers, and it can make our job easier if we can use artificial intelligence to save time on the production of the script and to develop new tools that can make our work easier when we're addressing these new crimes. There's this dual use of technology. And I think that's the biggest change. We're going to have to face new challenges, but at the same time, there will be new opportunities. And you were emphasizing swindling with alias. These are becoming more and more credible. We were talking with our Canadian friends who were talking about a wave of these, that is with deep fakes, which is inundating Canada, and which means that the victims really do fall for it, and the figures were quite eloquent since ChatGPT came out. The phishing you mentioned has increased by more than 1,250%. So we see that huge boom, and this is just the beginning. Hence the need to enhance training and technologies is important. Did you want to add something? As Iwen said, we have seen a significant improvement in the quality of phishing attacks. What we're also seeing a lot, and which could be very dangerous with AI, is attacks which are with less volume but better targeted and more personalized, and the success rate on these attacks is much higher than with a standard phishing mail sent out, where there's perhaps 1 or 2% will click. We do see attacks with vishing, V for voice, with a human action calling the victim, pretending to be their banker. It doesn't matter who, and personalizing the attack, discussing with the victim, and managing to trigger a data leak or a payment. And the AI engines that can imitate voices are going to make it possible to imitate this and to automate this and to use the system. This automation could really do this on a large scale. And there we see the whole scope of this phenomenon. And I think this is one of the challenges facing us, and that you're going to have to take up along with the challenges you already have. Vincent, would you like to add something? I would just like to point out that not so long ago, we had approaches in digital investigations where via a product, we took a machine we had captured on an investigation, extracted all the data, and we had all the data from that machine. Today, things have changed, and the idea, as we heard earlier, is a lot of scripting, bits of information that we can glean left and right. And any information is always on internet, on networks, sometimes in the US, in China. And so it really is much more complicated. Julien, regarding these changes, I think you are perhaps preparing for these as an investigator. What I would like to say is that there are challenges of scale for investigators. Unfortunately, investigators, and I'm talking here more about the police forces working in police stations and elsewhere, have got used to this wave of phishing, etc. And now, just when they've got used to this, there's going to be a new wave of artificial intelligence scams, and then there are two aspects that need to be addressed. We're going to have to use the different tools, and at the same time, they're going to need to address a threat using these same tools. So a lot of training is going to be necessary. That's what I wanted to say. Really, this upskilling of all these stakeholders in their mindset, in their approach, through the alerts, and also in their mastery of these tools. What do you think today? Do you think there will be more training to give investigators the skills they need to conduct these investigations? At Europol, there's no training framework planned for the moment, but we do have access to a huge amount of online information, sometimes free of charge, sometimes not. And with this open source community working on artificial intelligence, the accessibility of information is quite easy, and it's up to us to really make the effort and to train ourselves to try out the tools, to test them, and also to look at what's going on inside them. I think we really need to avoid using artificial intelligence like a black box, and to try to understand what the objective of one model or another is in order to make the best possible use of it. And for the moment, we have to make that effort ourselves. But once again, this access to information is good. And if you look at Hugging Face, which gives access to a lot of data, but also provides a lot of training. But I think it's also up to the police and the different agencies to do exercises, and in their police schools to take account of the machine learning aspect. I don't know if that's being done yet at European level, but I think that should become this normal. Did you want to add something? Yeah, to come back to what Iwan was saying, I think there's another point which is very important, which is the evidence which might have been generated by AI. There's the whole chain of custody issue, and so making sure that the evidence, being able to guarantee the origin of the evidence, and it's very important to avoid being accused of having produced manufactured evidence. And for the AI to be explainable, the police do need to adopt a critical approach to any tools that are offered to them. And it has to be very operational approach. So we're in favor of having joint laboratories and always having that constant dialogue between research and development and the operational side. There's a genuine issue here, obviously a legal issue here, of the question of prosecution, because once the investigation moves on to the judicial phase, it can be binding, and if there is a doubt, no matter how small that doubt, do we have any way today of guaranteeing that these investigations conducted with AI might be transparent and binding? The first thing is that the legislative side needs to be in place for this admissibility in certain cases. In an investigation, I've already heard of a judge who had to deal with an encrypted computer. So once that had been decrypted, the computer had been changed, it was no longer admissible. So with artificial intelligence, we are going to have a whole process of proving, demonstrating the transparency of the tools we're using. And unfortunately, there is a small risk here because this is a technology which evolves very quickly. And if it takes 6 or 12 months to be able to use a tool, it's going to already be obsolete. And so we have to find a compromise which might be, and without questioning this, we have to be able to prove that we have done things right and have processes and standards that enable us to accelerate things, to be able to use the technology at the right time. There's also the whole question of the AI Act at European level at present. We see this, there are a certain number of protections which are in place and which I'm sure are necessary, that you're convinced of this, but there are regulations which are very restrictive as regards what the security forces can do. How do you address this new dimension? Is this going to restrict your action? How do you see the first impacts of this text? For the moment, personally, there's no impact because I work mainly with public data for information and training of my models. There's no direct impact. What will have an impact is the administrative procedure which may be demanded to have specialists, legal specialists, who understand both the legal side and the operational and technical sides of artificial intelligence. And I've never met a person who really mastered all three subjects. So it might have to be a team of several people, but I do hope that we are going to manage to incorporate, to take account of this AI Act, because it's a world first. And I think we can be proud of having succeeded in coming up with a text like that today. I don't yet know whether it can be considered mature, but we need to take account of this and to facilitate things so that the text is as robust as possible without slowing down digital investigations. Then there's also the will in this text to find a balance between security and innovation. And also it's a text which will need to evolve over time with the context, and which needs to have a certain agility, even though we know that the European text and agility don't always go together. Mian, did you want to add something? The IA Act is mainly there to prohibit specific use cases using AI. And if I can give you an example, I don't know if you saw an episode of Black Mirror in which there was a life where everything is based on a sort of social score, in the same way that we give a score to an Uber driver. And it was the story of a person who wants to attend a wedding and who's having difficulty doing that, who's been downgraded for their score and finds themselves at the bottom of the social ladder. And this sort of social ranking of people is something which is addressed in that act. And outside of Black Mirror, that is something that actually exists at present in China with the social credit, and it's best to avoid crossing the road outside the zebra crossings. So on this legal aspect, this is something you mentioned at the beginning, Julien. Yeah, in fact, at the post office in our legal digital investigation department, there's AI, but we also work on open source and we do forensic investigations. And very often we have to make decisions on legality. And we're assisted in this by a legal expert, and we work hand in hand together. They are at our disposal. We can call them whenever we want to deal with a case, and we also try to show them typically how the operations work. And with that partnership, if I can call it that, we do manage to make genuine progress. We manage to understand what the problems are and to find solutions. And I think that really is very important. When I was in the police before, we didn't work at all like that. That's an approach I do find very interesting. Then regarding the regulations, of course, in Europe, in principle, we want to be the leaders in ethics, and I think that is a very good thing, in my opinion. Next, in terms of business, how things are going to turn out and the abuses that might emerge is that the downsides might be that we lose out on some innovation and that some actors relocate elsewhere, offshore their activities. For example, on face recognition, there is an obstacle there, but there are people who are outside Europe who can do this, and it's also these subjects that we need to address. And then, so all the facial recognition, there are things being done in Spain today and which are supervised. So even in Europe, that is something that can be done. And also this question of ethics, because from one continent or culture to another, we don't necessarily have the same definition of ethics, but we won't have time to go into that theme here. But I'm sure we can organize a session on that to talk about that next year. So, Vincent, I'd like to have your opinion on two subjects. First of all, the AI Act. What impact does it have on your work and your progress on your solutions? And then perhaps with Adrien on the question of training. We talked about this earlier, but among the different solutions you provide, do you accompany actors in these transformations to make better use of the possibilities that you offer through AI? In any case, for activities at Splunk, we systematically have onboarding training with the tool. It is sufficiently complex to need to explain how to use this. Also with the new threats to counter them. So if any of you here have particular needs, do come see us on our stand to talk about it. The AI Act, there isn't something we can really entirely assess. We don't have enough information yet, but I think what we have to avoid is having excessively strict legislation that stops us working. One example we haven't yet given is in the world of telephone investigations. It's known by everyone that we can do quite cutting-edge technical things, but often we have to go outside of Europe to Israel or to other countries to be able to overcome to the encryption, because the European legislation in certain cases does not allow it here. And so we've talked a lot about the police forces. There are also companies which do sometimes outsource these activities outside of France because they have that possibility. So we're handing over work to companies outside France. And that's a shame. So that's one of the limits of this. Adrien, did you want to add a word on the legal aspect, perhaps on the training? Yeah, on the question of training, artificial intelligence is a tool. And when a company starts a new tool, it has to train its employees to use it and perhaps adapt to the IT charter. Two things are important here. How do we work with these tools, especially with generative AI? And if we ask them a question, when we ask a child a question, we sometimes get an answer which isn't what we were expecting, whereas if we give them more context and explain that I want you to put yourself in the shoes of such and such a person and I want to have an answer on this question, the answer is going to be much more relevant. So it's important to teach people how to use these tools, and at Checkpoint internally, we have had training to explain how this works, but what's important is also to explain the risks involved in the use of this artificial intelligence, notably of data leaks. If you have, as it's very good for drafting text, if you have a text that includes data that's a bit confidential for a company, and if you do, and another company then does a search, they might find that data. So it's important to be aware of the fact that there is a significant link of data leaks. And it's a bit like, and the advantages and interests of this are understood very clearly. And this is where we have an important role regarding the educational aspect of this, which is a key point for users in the future, which could also perhaps reduce cybercrime. Julien. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the post office, there are 5,500 postal staff who have already had 4-hour training, and we also have intermediate to advanced training for people who are volunteers over a cycle of several weeks with different modules, which is quite interesting. And so that also needs developing in the country. So it's more generalist, but the aim is to train everybody. And all the staff need to have that awareness raised. So regarding the future of Starlight, we saw that there's progress and also some months on this project. And what is the future? The project will be finished in a 1.5 years' time. We hope that this community is going to continue to live, and there are also European initiatives with the Cybercrime Association, also financed by the European Commission, with which we're developing partnerships to be able to carry on this Starlight initiative, perhaps through another structure or entity. And we also hope that nationally this is going to encourage us to set up joint laboratories, academic, private sector, state laboratories, to continue this work, because now that we know each other and that we enjoy working together, we know how to talk to each other and we trust each other, we mustn't lose that. So it's important to make these activities sustainable through the European framework and to find a broader scope of application. And if I could also address the public on this subject. By under-exploiting this European framework, France contributes to this through its European financing, but there aren't yet enough European partners, and especially SMEs, which have committed to join consortiums, and it's a wonderful tool for de-risking research. The EU gives you financing to innovate. They don't ask you to pay back, and there have been loads of really big success stories of SMEs that started just with an idea, working on innovations from the public sector, and which are now marketing products which are being bought by the gendarmerie or other police services. There have been some splendid success stories, and all the money that was used from Europe that isn't included in the price. So thank you for that precise point. We have a few minutes left together, so I wanted to hand over to you and to let you ask your questions of our guests. I'll just ask you to put your hands up. We've put the lights on to be able to see. I just ask you to raise your hand. The first question is always very difficult, but I'm sure there are some questions. Hello. Frédéric L'Enfant. I work in cyber fraud, and you mentioned the use of AI in fraud, scams, deep fakes. And do we not perhaps need to focus on detection? In AI, there are going to be patterns which can be used in the detection phase. Do you have any projects for this, or are there projects to be able to facilitate this detection phase, because it's going to be important in the future at European level? I know there is a project I wouldn't be able to tell you the name, but I think 2 years ago this was a subject of interest to DG Home to develop a project who wanted to work on detection of deep fakes. If I hunt around a bit, I'm sure I can find you the name of that project and the contact details and partners on that project if you're interested. I would just like to add something on one point. Having deep fake detection is a very interesting research subject, and we are going to be able to work more and more with these digital identities, which are going to be more and more present in Europe. I also think we need to be able to authenticate content, and if we can have secure authentication of content, these deepfakes won't be authenticated. So there's the detection and also the official protection of content, which I think could be an interesting subject to look into. I know that Sony are already working on camera sensors which can identify the content, any content that has been produced in this way. One possibility could also be to use blockchain with NFT on specific videos. Hello, Samuel Waddell from France. I wanted to ask you about the European research project you're heading. What happens to the solutions that are detected, that are developed in this research program? Is the intellectual property and the solutions, are they then sold or shared? What happens? Do they become products? Thank you. Excellent question. It's for all this type of European project, we sign a grant agreement with the European Commission which states that everything we develop that has been done with public money must come back to the member states free of charge. So who is taking part in the project? All the interior ministries involved in this project must get the solution free of charge. But the co-authors, if there are several parties, can also make it into a commercial product and market it to non-partners of the project. Having said that, there are some subtleties here. If another member state that isn't a member of the consortium is interested in using the solution, it can ask to have access to it free of charge, and it's feasible. It's not really a problem, but giving a script or code which isn't maintained or updated can be a problem. And my work on I'm working on new types of business model, but is that we're perhaps going to develop a contract, a maintenance and collaboration contract to be able to sustain the project with you. And we're looking into this sort of business model. But the European Commission is really considering the creation of a European market for these solutions, which should be sovereign without implying purchase of solutions from other states. Are there any other questions? If there are no more questions, that is the end of this session. I've been delighted to spend this time with you. We are at a turning point in these investigations, these digital investigations that you conduct or support with your solutions, your companies, and with the security forces, and with an important European component, and with this international collaboration, which is central to this issue, both operationally and through regulations, governing these issues to enable this innovation, but with barriers in place to protect things and to be careful with what is done or what we don't want to do with this artificial intelligence, to support the investigators, always with the key focus being on human beings to fight against cybercrime and reduce the level of cybercrime. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me. It's been a pleasure to be with you here today and to work with you. Thank you to all of you for following this, for being with us this afternoon. Of course, the INCYBER Forum continues with other conferences and other stakeholders. Our speakers here are also present on their stands, and have a very good day.